Hey guys, picture this. You've survived the ice-cold fjord crossing, wrestled a boar for dinner, and just when you think you've conquered life in ancient Scandinavia, you realize you're about to marry the woman of your dreams, or someone else's dreams, and not in a fun way. Before you get comfortable, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's dive together into today's journey. The sun barely peeking over the jagged horizon, the morning of the wedding dawns as brutally as ever. Frost clings to your beard hairs like miniature daggers, your breath hissing into the air with every panicked sniff. You're supposed to feel excitement. Your bride awaits, but all you feel is a creeping dread. The entire village is already assembled. Elders with weathered faces that could crack under the weight of a sneeze. Young berserkers flexing their biceps as if to say, "I'll gladly help you survive this day, or bury you afterward." Horses stamp their hooves. Chickens squawk in terror. Even the goats look uneasy. Your father-in-law, a man whose handshake feels like getting your arm snapped in two, approaches, offering you a mug of warm mead. You gulp it like a man trying to forget he's about to owe this clan everything. He grins a grin that could peel paint, slaps you on the back, nearly sending you face first into the muddy ground. "Today," he bellows, "you become one of us. But first, you must prove your worth." Prove your worth? Had you not slaughtered that boar last night? Does running from the wolves at dawn not count? But of course, this is ancient Scandinavia, where every breath is a test and every ritual a loophole for someone to stick a spear in your side. As the priestess chants in a language older than the mountains, you're handed an axe. Not for the wedding feast, mind you, but for a ceremonial duel. Turns out, you must duel your wife's sworn protector, a hulking berserker named Bjorn the Bear Halfskin, whose nickname makes your morning coffee look like a kitten's purr. He's been waiting, 2 jugs deep in ale. Eyes glazed but bloodthirsty. The crowd roars. Either they love a good show or they're betting on which side you'll end up, alive or stuffed. You force a grin, heft the axe, and wonder if retreating into exile with your maiden aunt might have been the safer choice. "Strike true, Groom," calls the priestess, her voice echoing off the granite walls as if the mountain itself approves. Bjorn snarls, revs his muscles, and lunges. You block his swing, just barely, then stumble, nearly dropping your axe into the mud. The crowd gasps, and you realize 2 things at once. First, you're not in shape. Second, you're definitely regretting every mead-fueled decision that got you to this point. After surviving the duel, thanks to sheer luck and Bjorn's inexplicable hangover, you're escorted to the longhouse for the wedding feast. Would you believe the feast consists of 9 courses, each more questionable than the last? Roasted sheep brains, pickled seal flippers, fermented herring that smells like a troll's armpit. You force yourself to sample each dish, smiling through the gag reflex, while your bride's relatives nod approvingly. If you choke on brains, at least your death will be honorable. Your bride, a stoic beauty with icy blue eyes, offers a small, polite smile that says, "Welcome, I guess." Between courses, the village skald stands, lute in hand, and performs a wedding ballad chronicling every embarrassing moment of your past. How you peed your tunic at the county fair, how you once mistook a tree stump for your long-lost sibling. By the time he's done, your face is red enough to rival the embers of the hearth. You try to cover your ears, but the villagers lean in, laughing. Worst of all, the bride's father looks proud, as if he's watched a violent sport. This, you realize, is your new family tradition. Next up, the Oath of Unity. You and your bride must each drink from a horn filled with salted whale oil and honey wine, symbolizing that your lives will be as sticky and smelly as this concoction. You raise the horn, eyeing its contents with the caution of a man about to swallow molten tar. 1 gulp in, and your throat feels like it's been lined with burning pitch. Your eyes water, you hack, you nearly hurl, but you manage to finish. The bride follows suit, though she emerges unscathed, as if blessed by the old gods. You, on the other hand, sound like a cat being strangled. The priestess beams. "You are bound now," she declares, as if you've just signed a contract with invisible ink. But not quite. You still have to survive the procession. The entire wedding party marches through the village toward the sacred oak. clutching torches and singing songs older than your great-great-grandmother. It's supposed to be romantic, firelight dancing on twisted roots, but the real show begins when the ground beneath the oak opens up for the ritual of ancestral communion. They lower you and your bride into a shallow pit beside the tree, walls lined with slick stones. Torches flicker above as the villagers chant, calling on the spirits of your ancestors to witness your union and maybe judge you if you screw this up. In the dim glow, rats scurry across the stones, sniffing at your boots. You shift uncomfortably. Now you realize you're sharing a hole with vermin. The bride doesn't flinch, but you? You swear one sniff of rat droppings and you might turn tail and bolt into the forest. Then comes the gift exchange. Sort of. You present her family with a carved wooden chest. Inside, salted fish, a modest dowry. They smile pleasantly, then dump your gifts into a communal pile as if you've given them enough. In return, they give you their family heirloom, a tooth from a legendary sea serpent said to grant strength. Unfortunately, the tooth is jagged, piercing your palm as you grasp it. Pain shoots up your arm, and you wonder how many other bridegrooms have bled for this tradition. Probably dozens, probably forgotten, probably because they turned into fish food. Emerging from the pit, you hobble toward the meat hall, clutching your hand and looking like a pub wanderer in need of first aid. The bride offers her arm, all grace and dignity. You take it, wincing. As you march back, villagers toss handfuls of barley over your heads, a blessing. But it feels like a guerrilla attack. Grains crunch in your hair, down your neck. Suddenly you're itching all over. You look like a walking porridge. The final trial, the night watch. After the feast, you must guard the bridal chamber to protect your bride from restless spirits and rival clansmen. Conveniently, the bridal chamber is atop a creaky platform overlooking the fjord. The wind howls, slapping your cloak across your face like a ghost's tongue. Inside, the bridesmaidens giggle as they set up a series of nighttime tests, waking you every hour to recite a vow in dead tongues, demonstrate feats of strength, and even sing a lullaby to prove you have the heart of a poet. After 3 hours, you're so exhausted you might sleep through an invasion. But the maidens are relentless. Every time you nod off, a bucket of cold spring water splashes over your head. By dawn, you're half frozen, drenched, sleep-deprived, and entirely convinced that this marriage thing was a mistake. You stagger out of the chamber. The bride appears fully refreshed, hair braided with wildflowers. She smiles sympathetically. You manage a weak grin back, but your knees buckle. The wedding is done, yet you still have to prove yourself in the weeks ahead. Raiding parties, harvest blessings, and communal barn raising, because nothing says happily ever after like surviving more forced labor with your new in-laws. So you limp off to the hearth, nursing a mug of steaming broth, wondering if your ancestors are laughing at you. Maybe they are, or maybe they're shaking their heads at your foolishness. Either way, you've learned a valuable lesson. In ancient Scandinavia, being the groom is less about romance and more about a relentless obstacle course designed to humble you. And by the looks of it, you've barely survived the first lap. But hey, that's what makes history unforgettable. The dawn after the wedding arrives not with the promise of rest, but with the clang of iron axes as the groom, now officially family, must join the first raid of his in-laws. You shuffle out of the longhouse, cloaks still sodden from the night's cold dousing, and find a line of longships drawn up on the shore. The waves slap the hulls like impatient beasts, eager to fling you into another slaughter. Your new brothers-in-law grin, faces blackened with war paint, muscles bulging beneath furs. They hand you a shield scarred from a dozen battles and a spear tipped with rust. "Show us courage," one of them growls. Courage, you think, is surviving childbirth stench more than a berserker's rage. You climb aboard, balancing on planks soaked by the tide, and the oarsmen begin their rhythmic chant. Row, row, row! It echoes off the rocks, a heartbeat of war. Each pull of the oar feels like lifting the weight of expectation. At the prow stands the chieftain, your father-in-law, towering in a wolfskin cloak, eyes burning with pride. He raises his axe and roars, and in that moment you realize your life has become the pounding tempo of war, the endless hunt for glory, or at least survival. The destination is a rival settlement across the strait. You've heard tales of these people, farmers who breathe too freely, whose barns are rich with grain, who laugh at shields forged thicker than their skulls. In your dreams, if you dared sleep, You imagine charging through their wooden gates, spear aimed at some unsuspecting villager's gut. But as you near shore, your stomach churns. The tide pulls stronger, the ship creaks ominously, and you remember the price of fancy tales, a face full of fists and teeth. When the longship grounds with a jolt, you leap overboard into freezing water, armor dragging you under until you kick free. You scramble onto the muddy beach, cold seeping into your bones faster than fear. Around you the battle erupts, a frenzy of steel and screams. You grip your spear, squint through your visor, and lunge at the nearest opponent, only to skewer his thigh and watch him stumble away in agony. Not exactly a heroic feat, but it'll do. Nearby, your sister-in-law. Yes, they've invited women to fight, slashes at an enemy's shoulder, cackling like a witch. You congratulate her awkwardly, then realize the thrill of drawing blood is tempered by the taste of salt water and iron in your mouth. After the skirmish, you gather the spoils, dried fish, stolen livestock, a handful of silver coins. Your chieftain nods approvingly and slaps you on the back so hard you nearly collapse. "A true son of the clan," he bellows. You smile and nod, praying your ribs hold together. The raid is over, but the labor begins. Herding sheep across rocky passes, hauling logs to rebuild burned granaries, mending nets by candlelight that flickers like ghosts. Your bride appears each evening, offering bread and cheese, her eyes soft with concern. She doesn't have to ask. You show her the bruises gradually blooming across your arms. She squeezes your hand, whispering that this is the price of honor. You nod, tasting bile. Weeks blur into months. The harvest arrives, a frenzy of sweat and song, as you and your new kin use every waking hour to gather grain before the first frost. Your father-in-law commands you to supervise the barn build. You try to look authoritative while guiding a crew of burly farmers who grunt at your orders as if you're asking them to milk wolves. Each beam you lift sends splinters through your palms. Each nail you hammer leaves dents in your knuckles. By dusk, your muscles rebel and you collapse on a haystack, dreaming of soft pillows. But ancient Scandinavia offers no respite. Mid-harvest, the clan prepares for the fertility rite of Freyr, a midnight ritual in the forest, clearing where all couples must dance around an ancient totem made of intertwined branches. It's meant to ensure bountiful crops and healthy children, but to you it feels like a public humiliation. You're handed a drinking horn filled with spiced ale. Your bride, wearing a wreath of oak leaves, takes yours. Together you swirl, heady from the brew, singing growled lyrics that feel more like curses. Every misstep, your boot crushing her wreath, her elbow jostling your ribs, draws laughter from the crowd. When you finally collapse in a heap, the skald writes a new verse mocking your clumsiness. You buy him another horn, hoping the next song spares you. As autumn tightens its grip, rumors swirl of winter raiders from the north, frozen desperados who slaughter indiscriminately. The chieftain summons a war council in the great hall, its walls lined with shields and antler chandeliers dripping with soot. Torches glare against wooden beams. You sit beside your father-in-law, the bride's mother pouring you mead through a ladle. She watches you with an arched eyebrow. Is that pity or calculation? Outside, the wind howls, rattling the shutters. The chieftain slams his fist on the table and declares that the clan must strike first, sailing north to plunder the plundering tribes. He looks at you. You gulp mead, warm and sticky, and feel the weight of destiny or dread pressing down. The second raid is harsher. You sail into swirling storms, waves pitching the longship like a cradle of death. Salt stings your eyes, thunder booms like the drums of fate. When you finally land, you find an outpost half buried in snow, its defenders few. The attack is swift, swords gleam under gray skies. Yet as you rush forward, gloved hands slipping on ice, you realize you know nothing of cold warfare. Spears shatter against frozen shields, boots skid in snowdrifts. You plunge your spear into a raider's midsection, but his cloak is thick and the blade glances off. He returns the favor, grazing your thigh and leaving a sting that burns like fire. You crumple, nose dripping blood, and for a moment, just one, you wonder if life is nothing more than a series of lacerations. Your comrades drag you to a makeshift shelter, a lean-to of planks and fur. They bind your wound with strips of cloth and pour healing salve, rendered bear fat mixed with crushed herb. It smells like rotting pine. You grit your teeth, thinking of all the advice you ignored. Stay humble, stay alive. Your bride appears by the fire, bundled in skins, her face streaked with soot and concern. She presses a flask of warm broth to your lips. You sip, it tastes like hope. She murmurs that you fought bravely. Your vision blurs, and for a moment you drift toward unconsciousness. In the darkness, you dream of being back on your wedding day, the village cheering as you stumbled through the pit. Only now the pit is deeper, the crowd more unforgiving. Winter settles in with a vengeance. Blizzards bury the longhouse roof. Weasels and stoats scurry for warmth. The mead runs thin. You awaken from fever delirium to find your bride leaning over you, face ghostly in candlelight. You shiver so violently you fear your teeth will shatter. She tucks a fur blanket tighter and hums a lullaby in a tongue older than the sea. Through the haze, you grasp her hand, marveling that someone so fierce and graceful could love a broken, frostbitten fool like you. But love in ancient Scandinavia is as wild as the land. It nourishes you, yes, but it also demands your sacrifice. One morning, the ice on the fjord cracks, sending sharp retorts through the air. The village awakens to the sound and scrambles to the shore. Across the water, a giant ship appears, black sail billowing, dragon's head prow snarling. It belongs to Jarl Eirik Bonecrusher Gunnarsson, the most feared warlord of the north. He's come not to raid, but to parley. He demands tribute, or he'll burn the entire settlement. Your father-in-law stands at the shore, sword drawn, chest heaving. The villagers look to him, and to you. You feel the weight of expectation. Marry well, fight well, bleed well. Eric's envoy strides forward, tall as a pine, thick as an oak. He hands a message, horn bound in iron, tribute in silver, livestock, and 2 hostages, one of whom must be a groom newly married. Your heart hammers. Hostages! The bride clutches your arm. Her eyes widen as she realizes the clause. You stare at your wife, the same woman who calmed your fever, who challenged you to prove your worth. You swallow. I will go, you say, voice steady despite the tremor inside. The villagers murmur approval. The wind whistles in agreement. That night, you pack your few belongings. A worn cloak, the jagged serpent tooth, a flint and steel. Your bride hands you a small carved token, a figure of Freyr carved from copper. For protection, she whispers. You press it to your heart. Then she hugs you, a fierce, sudden embrace. Come back, she says. You nod, though you're not sure which of you believes the promise. At dawn, you board Eric's ship under a white flag. The deck is slick with frost, the sails furled, the air thick with tension. Eric himself stands at the stern, cloak sweeping the deck like a shadow. He glances at you, sizing you up with eyes that have seen 1,000 broken men. You will do, he says. No threat, no kindness, just a statement of fact. He hands you a chalice of mead, bitter as regret. You drink because to refuse would be to beg for death. The mead burns your throat, but you swallow, arms aching, spirit tightening like a noose. Below deck, you and another groom, trembling, wide-eyed, are shown to a cabin. It's sparse, a straw mattress, a single torch, a bucket. Eric's guard locks the door behind him. Night descends. You lie on the mattress, the copper token clutched in your fist. The bucket at your feet echoes every shift, every breath. You listen for footsteps, for the flap of sails, for the distant murmur of the sea. The fear coils tighter with each passing hour, a snake ready to strike. You wonder if your bride sleeps peacefully, if she misses your heavy breathing, your nightmares. You whisper a vow into the darkness. I will return. Morning light filters through a narrow hatch. You rise stiffly, joints clicking like ice against stone. There's a knock at the door. A guard slides it open and hands you a tray. Smoked fish, rye bread, a ladle of mead. You eat mechanically, mind whirling, negotiation, escape, death. The guard's eyes flick to your serpent tooth, then to the copper Freyr. He smirks. Lucky charms, he mutters. You force a grin. Eric summons you to the deck. You step out into crisp air and face the warlord once more. He extends a hand and says, Our agreement stands, 2 hostages for peace. You and your fellow groom will stay until the tribute is paid. He turns, barking orders. The longship creaks away from the shore. leaving your home behind, a cluster of smoke and warmth now fading into a distant memory. As the fjord narrows, you watch the shoreline shrink, your heart twists with longing and terror. But beneath it all, a stubborn ember glows. You swore to return. The sea wind rips at your cloak, and you clutch the copper frere, teeth set in determination. Ancient Scandinavia may delight in torment, but you have learned its lessons: survive, endure, return. For now, the nightmare continues, but you will face it, spear in hand, heart bolstered by love and iron will. And someday, you will stand on your home shore again, ready to claim your place, not just as a groom who survived, but as a man who conquered the crucible of history. The dawn wind cuts through your cloak like a sharpened axe, reminding you that life as Eric's hostage is a sharper kind of trial. Days bleed together. You wake to the creak of the ship's timbers, eat a meager breakfast of hard biscuits and brackish water, then pace the deck as sailors bury their axes in the mast or mend sails. Your fellow groom, a gaunt youth from the western fjords, hunches nearby, muttering curses under his breath. You want to comfort him. We'll get home. But your own stomach knots at the thought. One afternoon, a messenger from Eric descends from the deck above. His male-bristled face betrays amusement as he grips your shoulder and whispers, "Your father-in-law fears you'll escape. He sent envoys with the tribute, but insists on seeing proof you remain." Proof you remain. Your limbs twitch. The guard escorts you below deck, back into the dank cabin where the air hangs thick with salt and despair. They hand you the tribute chest. Silver coins clink inside, skull carvings on its lid. You nod, feigning pride at the transaction. Above you, the longship creaks toward the enemy outpost. You're marched onto the quarterdeck, sun glare slicing through frigid air. Eric stands tall, cloak clasped with a wolf's fang. He claws open the chest, tallies coins, then raises a hand. "The tribute is enough," he declares, voice booming like thunder off fjord walls. "Our agreement holds." A cheer rises from the crew, but you feel a drain, as if your life's essence has been traded for a handful of silver. That night, they offer you a private feast to solidify goodwill, Eric says. In a gleaming pavilion on deck, lit by a lantern's warm glow, you recline at a low table. A carved elk's head watches you as servers place platters of spiced pork, honey-glazed roots, and bowls of sweet berry wine. It smells of home. You lift a cup, hesitate, then sip, letting sweetness flood your senses. For a moment, you taste hope. Eric reclines opposite you, ivory beard braided with iron beads. He toasts, "To peace between our clans." You clink cups, but amid the revelry, you cannot ignore the undercurrent. The crew's eyes flick to you with curiosity, suspicion. A sailor in the corner hums an old war song about betrayal, making you recall the vow you whispered, return or die. Do you betray this man who holds your fate or bide your time? You swallow pride and lean in. "Your reputation precedes you, Jarl," you say, voice steady. "You honor your word." He studies you, then smirks. "Do I? So long as man honors his bond." His gaze snakes to the copper frere token at your neck. "Believer in old gods?" he asks. You nod. He grunts. "They guide fools and heroes alike." The feast dissolves into song and laughter, but you slip away when the drums start. Below deck, you kneel by the tiny hatch, copper token clutched. The waves batter the hull like a war drum. You listen, every creak, every shuffle, planning. Escape feels impossible, open sea all around, guards posted like sentinels. Even the gulls seem in league with your captors, crying overhead in mocking caws. You straighten, rub sore knees, and decide that patience is your ally. You will wait for the moment when armor loosens, when sword racks empties, when thirst and fatigue blur vigilance. Until then, you endure. Days later, the longship guns into your village harbor under gray skies. You recognize the mossy quay, the carved dragon heads lining the docks. It's home, yet alien. Villagers watch in silence as Eric's ship glides in. Their faces, a mix of awe and dread, remind you that though you are a hostage, you are also the harbinger of mercy. Eric disembarks, chest puffed, banners snapping. He strides to the chieftain's hall. You trail behind at a safe distance. Inside, torchlight flickers on furs and shields. Your father-in-law stands, arms folded. He nods to Eric, who produces the tribute chest, now empty. The clansmen murmur. Peace holds. Yet you stand at the edge of that hall, an island in a sea of wary eyes. Your bride steps forward, dressed in solemn white fur, hair plaited with silver ribbons. Relief washes your features and hers. She grips your arm. Behind you, the Jarl nods, turns, and departs with his host. Guards unlock your cabin hatch. You breathe the cold air freely, feet firmly on solid ground. For the first time in weeks, your heart lifts, until you remember the cost. You're free, but freedom in ancient Scandinavia is never guaranteed. Your father-in-law beckons you into a side room, a chamber lined with runestones and the skulls of vanquished foes. He closes the door. You have returned, he says quietly. But you owe the clan more than tribute. You swallow. Name it. He uncovers a sealed scroll. Your task, to lead a band of warriors to reclaim a lost settlement across the mountains, abandoned years ago after a devastating plague. He wants it rebuilt, re-peopled, fortified, a bastion to protect your home from northern raiders. Your bride's eyes flicker, pride, fear, determination all mixed. You feel the weight of responsibility shift from Eric's ship to your shoulders. You unseal the scroll, read the order, rebuild the settlement, lead 20 warriors, survive the journey. You nod slowly. I will do it. Outside, the wind rattles shutters. The next morning, you assemble your small warband at dawn. 20 men, hardened farmers, a few berserkers bored of farming, a skald eager for new verses. They gape as you spread the scroll atop a wooden barrel, mapping the route through snow-dusted peaks. No ship this time, only your feet, horses, and a handful of sleds. You pack provisions, dried meat, fish cakes, salted cheese, barrels of mead strong enough to burn tummies. Each pack strap digs into your shoulders as a reminder that survival here demands sacrifice. Your bride surprises you by volunteering to accompany you, not as a hostage, but as co-leader. She's a skilled huntress and herbalist. Her knowledge of mountain passes rivals any guide. You clasp her hand. Stay close, you whisper. She nods, loading a quiver of arrows on her back. Together, you lead the warband north, leaving your newborn daughter in the care of the village. An exchange of trust. The path ascends immediately. The air thins, cold biting through layers. Horses snort and shiver. The sled runners creak over rocks. By midday, frost crystals form on beards. You pause at a narrow pass, sheer rocks on one side, 1,000-foot drop on the other. A single misstep means death. Your heart hammers. You steady yourself, recalling every lesson Eric's captain hammered into you. 1 foot, then the next. Don't look down. You guide the horses with low tones, your bride beside you, scanning for handholds. A loose rock slides, you catch it midair, breathe out. The warband crosses safely. On the 3rd day, you descend into the valley where the settlement lies. Half-buried huts, collapsed fences, smoke from a single hearth flickering near the central hall. You smell wood smoke mingled with rot, the remnants of life striving against decay. You blow your conch horn. The echo bounces off mountain walls. Silence. Then a ragged figure emerges. An old woman cloaked in furs, walking with a staff carved like a serpent. She approaches and looks you over with one good eye. The plague took us, she says, but some survived. Behind her, a handful of villagers, women and children, peer from shelters. You dismount, kneel before the old woman. I've come to rebuild, you say, to protect. She cackles softly. Protection? This land eats men like you for breakfast. She motions to empty fields. Seeds frozen, wolves thick as trees, spirits restless. Your bride steps forward. We'll rebuild, she says, with your help. The old woman studies her, then nods. We will teach you the ways of this mountain, but you must earn it. A test. Guide 10 villagers across the frozen river to gather winter firewood, returning by nightfall. Succeed, and the settlement pledges its loyalty. Fail, and you will leave, taking your warband with you. Never to return, you accept. The villagers strap on sled runners. You and your bride lead them onto the ice. The river stretches wide, creaking under weight. You choose a route over thinner ice tunnels, shorter but riskier. Every crack underfoot sends adrenaline surging. Halfway, a jagged snap. A patch gives way, water swirling below. You kick at the ice's edge, haul a villager out. The sled drifts away. Your heart thumps as you chase it, plunging a branch through the surface. The sled clatters to a stop. You tie a rope and drag the load back. Night falls as you return, wood stacked high. The old woman awaits at the hall's threshold. She nods solemnly. You have proven yourself. Torchlight flickers on her lined face. Tonight, we feast. Tomorrow, the hard work begins. You exhale, chest heavy with relief. Your bride smiles, eyes reflecting torchlight. You step into the hall with the villagers, the war band behind you, feeling both relief and anticipation. The real challenge, you realize, is only beginning. Reclaiming life from the harshest of lands, forging a home out of ruin. As the feast begins, smoked meats, fresh bread, honeyed barley wine, you raise your cup. You remember that first wedding day, the duel, the pit, the raids, the hostage ordeal. Each trial armed you with hard-won lessons. Now, as you sit among these survivors, your heart swells with purpose. This settlement will stand again, stronger, united, and you, once a quivering groom thrust into nightmare, are becoming its guardian. The road ahead is perilous, but so is any tale worth telling. You take a long draught of wine, savoring the warmth. Tomorrow, you begin rebuilding. Tonight, you celebrate survival, and the promise of a home reborn. Months blur into cycles of frost and thaw, as you and the villagers work from dawn's pale light until the stars flicker like distant fires. Under your bride's meticulous direction, timber frames rise from cleaved logs. Thatched roofs go up thick as wolf pelts. Stout palisades encircle the hamlet. You haul stones for hearths, shimmy along scaffolding, and hammer nails until your knuckles glow white. Every evening, you collapse by the fire, panting, muscles humming with pain and pride. Beside you, your bride tends her herb garden, drying sprigs of sage and juniper for winter salves. She offers you a cup of steaming nettle tea, sweetened with spruce honey. You sip, tasting the earth's bitterness, and realize this life carved from isolation, is your true forging. Yet peace in ancient Scandinavia is always borrowed. One dawn, scouts return breathless, tracks, dozens of them, crisscrossing the snow outside the palisade. Wolves maybe, or worse, human predators escaping from far-off wars. You muster your warband, 20 men lean from scarred faces to shivering youth, and your bride flanks you, bow at rest, eyes steely. As you step beyond the wooden gate, a cold wind snarls in your ears, urging caution. The footprints vanish at the tree line. You strain your ears, a twig snaps. Shields up, you and your men fan out, moving in careful arcs like bears stalking prey. No wolves howl. Instead, a ragged shout echoes, too human, too desperate. You burst through pines into a clearing. 5 emaciated figures huddle around a fire so small it barely chokes out sparks. They wear shredded cloaks, faces hollow as icicles, eyes pleading. You lower your spear, but keep your guard raised. Clan? You ask. A man with frost-bitten fingers nods, voice a rasp. Raid, south, ran from Jarl Eirik. Army turned on villagers. We escaped. Panic eyelashes flicked by cold. Their story. Eirik, your former captor, had enacted a purge on suspected traitors, crucifying families by a frozen river. These survivors broke free, pursued into the mountains. Your mind snaps. Eirik's wrath has come for your settlement. You grip your spear, teeth grinding. Bring them inside, you order. Your bride signals the men to lower weapons. You herd the refugees through the gate, wrapping them in furs. As they warm, you interrogate them beneath flickering torches. Eirik's army marches to crush your new home, claiming betrayal because you negotiated peace. Rage curls in your gut like a serpent. You pace before the council, bride, elders, warband captains, voice thunderous. We prepared for winter, not an invasion, but we will defend our home. We fight for hearth and kin. Heads nod, weapons are sharpened, pit traps dug beneath snow-covered earth. The night before the battle, you and your bride walk the palisade walls, suspended between silence and the dawn's chaos. The wind rattles the shutters, wolves howl beyond the fortifications. She presses a warm hand to your cheek, her breath a whisper. "We've come this far," she murmurs. "We will endure." You draw her close, chest heaving. "Promise me you'll stay safe." She smirks, fingers curling around your neck. "I have arrows and runes. I'll protect our home, and you." You taste the tart pinch of fear and resolve. "Tomorrow we fight." She nods, lips brushing yours, sealing a vow more binding than any mead oath. At first light, the horizon shimmers with the black banners of Eric's host. Hundreds of warriors trudging through snow, like a living avalanche. Their war horns blast a guttural roar that shakes your bones. You stand atop the wall, clad in layered furs and iron, spear in hand, heart pounding. Below, your warband positions along the gate, shields locked. Women and elders clutch bows, hand axes, boiling oil. Children huddle in the longhouse, watched by the bravest among you. You climb down, posture erect and stride to the gate. Your war captain, Bjorn Halfskin's brother, bold, scarred, claps you on the shoulder. "Lead them well, son," he grunts. You nod. The ground trembles as the enemy reaches your palisade. Eric appears atop his mount, cloak trailing, eyes icy as the fjord at dawn. He meets your gaze across the field. Former captor, foe, arbiter of your fate. You raise your spear. He tosses down a gauntlet, challenged by honor. You wade into the snow, eyes locked. "This land belongs to its people," you shout. He sneers. "Then defend it." You pivot, raise the runed banner your bride embroidered. It ripples like a living thing. Behind you, the archers notch arrows. The warband roars. The assault begins. Axes pound gate, shields clash, spears thrust. You leap into the fray, spears singing as it cuts through wind and flesh. Snow churns red, screams thicken the air. Your bride looses arrows from the wall. Her aim deadly, each shaft felling a man twice her size. You fight side by side, pushing the tide. An enemy breaks through. You intercept. A moment's dance of steel, sparks spraying as your blades collide. You end him with one final downward thrust. He crumples, snow absorbing his last breath. Triumph and horror twist in your gut. As battle rages, you spot Eric charging through the breach, axe raised. He's a whirlwind of fury, smiting shields aside. You sprint across the blood-soaked ground, calling your bride's name. She sees you and leaps down to join. Together, you face the warlord and his elite guard. Steel meets steel. The world narrows to axe swings and parries. Eric's roar wrenches your armor. One blow cracks your breastplate, pain flaming through your ribs. You stagger, vision dimming. Your bride whirls, elbow smashing his guard's jaw, then thrusts twin daggers at Eric's side. He reels, clutching his flank. You seize the moment, gather every ounce of strength, and hurl your spear straight into his shoulder. He howls, staggering back. You don't hesitate. You sprint, draw your sword, and drive it through his heart. His eyes widen in shock. His roar dies into a gasp. He collapses into snow, blood blossoming like night roses. Silence blankets the field. Eric's warriors gape. Then, one by one, they drop arms, eyes flickering from their fallen jarl to you and your bride. The survivors kneel and surrender. You and your bride stand bloodied but unbowed, hearts still hammering. Victory tastes of iron and sorrow. You lower your sword. "Spare them," you command. "Send them home with word. This land is defended by its people, by honor, by blood." The soldiers scramble to obey. In the aftermath, you wander through the battered walls, checking on wounded, comforting the mothers of lost sons. Your bride tends the injured, her hands gentle despite the war's cruelty. You stop at Eric's body, kneel, and pull forth the spear. He was once your captor, your judge, now a fallen giant. You close his eyes, whisper a bitter blessing, and turn away. Weeks pass as you bury the dead and tend to the living. The settlement, scarred but resolute, begins to heal under your guidance. Winter's grip loosens. The first green shoots stir beneath melting snow. You and your bride oversee planting seeds for spring grain, restoring the fields your people will need to thrive. Every furrow you cut is a promise of renewal. On the first clear morning of spring, the village assembles at the rebuilt longhouse. Torches burn in brackets, smoke drifting like memory. Your bride stands beside you, hand in yours. The clan's elders, survivors, and children gather, faces bright with hope. You raise the serpent-toothed trophy, once a harbinger of pain, now a symbol of survival. We face storms, raiders, plague, and death, you say, voice echoing off timber walls. We endured because we stood together, refused despair, and fought for our home. Murmurs of agreement ripple through the crowd. Then your father-in-law steps forward, the same man who challenged you at the wedding pit, who sent you on perilous missions, who tested every ounce of your spirit. He places a heavy hand on your shoulder. You have become more than a groom, he proclaims. You are our guardian, our smith of survival, our living legend. The clan erupts in cheers. Your bride turns to you, eyes glistening. We did it, she whispers. You smile, pulling her close. Together, you reply. In that moment, the weight of every trial, frozen nights, bloody fields, relentless labor, melts away into triumph. You remember that first wedding day, the duel, the pit of ancestral communion. Each absurd ritual, each brutal challenge was a brick in the fortress of who you've become. As the feast begins, roasted venison, fresh barley bread, sweet mead, you raise your cup beside your bride. You toast to survival, to community, to love tempered by hardship. Lantern light dances on your faces, laughter rises, and the newly rebuilt settlement hums with life. You take a long draught of mead, savoring its warmth. Outside, the sun climbs higher, warming frozen stones and thawing old wounds. You rest your spear against the wall, sheath your fears, and step into the bright new day you've claimed with blood and steel. History may not remember every groom's tale, but this Sunday sunrise in ancient Scandinavia marks the end of a nightmare and the birth of a legend. Imagine standing beneath marble arches, draped in a toga so tight you can't breathe, as heaps of raw fish and pickled dormouse slide across golden platters, and realizing you'll either choke on delicacies fit for a god or be crushed by your own. Elaborate footwear. Welcome to a Roman wedding. Betrothed at dawn, you awaken to blaring trumpets, your mother-in-law's cue to start the day with a ritual face-slapping called the junctio magnum. Before you can even think, I do, a priestess demands you demonstrate your grip strength by tearing apart a circle of intertwined hands, symbolizing unbreakable bonds. You bite back the urge to ask if you can just sign a prenup instead. By mid-morning, you're paraded through the forum on a litter of ivory and ostrich feathers, carried by 6 sweaty slaves who grunt in perfect sync. The crowd cheers, some in celebration, most betting on how long before you topple from that ridiculous chair. Every jostle sends your heart racing. Is that excitement or terror as the litter tilts dangerously? You catch a glimpse of your bride-to-be, face painted white with chalk, her lips ringed in dark red, eyes fixed on you as if hoping you don't embarrass her entire family. Suddenly, a troupe of dancers staggers through the procession, performing the Sali war dance, leaping with bronze shields that clang louder than a legion's march. One dancer's bronze gauntlet clips your shoulder, nearly sending you sprawling into a cart of courting pigeons. The birds flutter up, cooing their confusion, while the spectators roar with delight. You cough, scrape off feathers, and wonder if you'll ever live this down. Arriving at the domus of your in-laws, you're thrust into a courtyard alive with song and incense smoke so thick it tastes like burnt laurels in your lungs. A choir of Vestal virgins chants blessings in archaic Latin, each syllable so elongated it feels like time itself is mocking you. As they finish, the paterfamilias raises his bronze goblet of mulsum, honeyed wine, and toasts to unity and posterity. You clink cups, only realizing too late that the ritual cup is rimmed with biting mallow root, leaving your tongue numb for the next hour. Then comes the feast, 9 courses of culinary nightmares disguised as luxury. First, oysters stuffed with sow's udders. Next, dormice roasted in honey and poppy seeds. You force a smile as the dormouse winks back, probably hallucinating from the poppies. Third course, boiled ostrich, tough enough to warrant a gladiator's chisel. You chew valiantly, jaws aching, while the bride's cousins nod approvingly, tapping their sandals impatiently for more. By course 6, the skald stands, lute in hand, ready to recite your life story in epic verse. He begins with your childhood scandal, the time you mistook the family altar for a public latrine. The crowd guffaws, you flush hotter than the forges of Vulcan. The skald then recounts your less embarrassing feats, like that time you survived a boar hunt, turning it into a heroic saga as the audience howls at your astonishing lack of fashion sense, wearing a tunic 2 sizes too large. Between courses, the augur arrives, bird guts dripping from his hands, to read omens from the sacrificial chicken. He squints at the liver, frowns, and declares, "Beware, dark days ahead." The bride's father raises an eyebrow. Does he cancel the union now? No, he simply orders another round of garum-marinated fish. You force another gulp of garum-scented wine, hoping the augur meant someone else. As dusk falls, torches flare along the colonnade. You're led to the atrium's hearth for the lares and penates ritual. Your task: carry your bride's flame from her father's hearth to yours, symbolizing the transfer of loyalty. You scoop embers with trembling hands, transporting them in a hollow reed. On the way, you trip over a mosaic of Mercury guiding souls. Your reed snaps, embers scatter. You crouch to salvage glowing coals, knees ablaze. The guests gasp. The bride's relatives cluck in disapproval. You scoop up the hottest coals with bare hands, a foolish display of devotion that sears your palms and ego alike. Finally, the procession moves indoors for the nuptial chamber ceremony. Torches gutter, revealing an alcove draped in crimson silk. A flute ensemble plays a mournful tune, their notes weaving through the room like vines of despair. The bride steps forward, offerings in hand, an ivory comb, a bracelet of carnelian, and a tiny vial of perfumed oil. It's your turn. You must present your wife with a wedding ring, a gold band carved to resemble entwined serpents. You fumble in your toga pocket, dropping the ring behind an altar of Bacchus. In crawling around, you knock over a statue, which crashes into a marble basin. Water sloshes across the floor, soaking the priest's robes. He stares at you with the fury of a god scorned. By the time you reach the ring, the room is dark, the guests amused, the bride's face a mask of dignified constriction. You finally slide the ring onto her finger, only to have it pinch her flesh. She yanks her hand back. The ring lodges under her nail. You yelp, she curses. The priest drags you both forward to confess your sins before Juno. You kneel on cold stone, knees shaking as the priest intones ancient curses upon your lineage if you fail to uphold marital harmony. At last, the ceremony concludes. You stagger into the night air, bruised, exhausted, and convinced you'll never survive the honeymoon, if the bride's mood doesn't claim your life first. A torch-wielding slave leads you to the cubiculum, where a narrow bed draped in peacock feathers awaits. You collapse onto it, terrified of what comes next. A trial of intimacy more daunting than any gladiatorial match. And so ends the first act of your Roman wedding saga, a day of spectacle, ritual, and culinary peril that would break even the hardiest legionnaire. Stay tuned for part 2, where you'll face the dowry negotiations, the bridal bath shock therapy, and the unforgettable test of loyalty that will define your entire marriage. The morning after feels like waking inside a waking nightmare, your head still pounding from garum fumes and toga constriction. Before you can even locate your sandals, your mother-in-law arrives with a ledger the size of a soldier's shield. "Dowry negotiations," she announces with a gleam in her eye that says you'll bleed more over coins than at the gladiator arena. You're ushered into a peristyle courtyard where half a dozen stern-faced relatives lounge on marble benches. In the center, the paterfamilias unrolls scrolls detailing every item of value your family must now relinquish. 10 silver drachmas, a herd of 3 goats, 2 ivory combs, and that rare goblinwood chest you thought was a family heirloom. You gulp and counter-offer with, "How about 8 drachmas?" The air shatters with laughter. "Generosity is not your strong suit," the bride's uncle chides, scratching his chin. You swallow your pride, and more drachmas, wondering if a legion's spoils might have been safer. Dowry settled, by bankrupting yourself, you're led to the women's quarters for the infamous nuptial bath. The bath is a mosaic-lined chamber filled with steaming water, scented so pungently of rose petals and goat's milk that you question whether you've entered a spa or a sacrificial altar. The bride's maidens surround you, brandishing oil-soaked sponges. You attempt modesty, toga clutched, but they whisk it away with surgical precision. Suddenly you're naked before a dozen giggling matrons who scrub you like a sooty wall. They exfoliate your skin raw, pour perfumed oils down your spine, and dab at every inch of hair, even the tufts in regrettable places. You wince as they clamp a hairnet so tight it doubles as medieval torture. Emerging, you feel cleaner than at birth, but also more exposed than ever. Next comes the test of loyalty, a private rite whispered about in brothels and bistros alike. In the dim glow of oil lamps, you're led to the atrium where the bride awaits, draped in violet silk, eyes razor sharp. In her hand, a small dagger blessed by the Vestal virgins. The priest instructs, you must carve your names intertwined into a sacrificial loaf of spelt bread, symbolizing shared life and shared sacrifices. As you kneel, the blade slips, gouging your thumb. Blood beads on the loaf like raindrops on marble. You press your thumbprint into the dough, heart hammering. The bride leans forward, inspects the mark, and nods solemnly. We bleed for this union, she intones. You shudder at both the ritual's romance and its raw literalness. By midday, you're adorned in a second toga, this one dyed Tyrian purple, heavy and scratchy. You're paraded again through the domus, this time carrying the sacred loaf aloft. Servants hurry behind, shielding it from dirt and onlookers' jealous fingers. The crowd parts as you pass, some in reverence, most wondering how you'll manage another public spectacle without face planting into a bleeding loaf. Returning to the nuptial chamber, you collapse onto the peacock feather mattress, toga still clinging like a second skin. Your bride joins you, offering her handkerchief, embroidered with your initials in gold thread, to wipe blood from your thumb. Welcome to married life, she whispers, eyes dancing with mischief. You manage a weak grin, pinch your bruised thumb, and realize the honeymoon is no gentle sail, but a relentless odyssey of ritual, debt, and very sharp objects. And worst of all, it's only day 2. The third dawn of your nuptial ordeal breaks with a clatter of wooden sandals on mosaic floors. Today's agenda: integration with the clan of the bride. You're summoned to the atrium, where a semicircle of your new relatives awaits, each clutching small jugs of perfumed water. The eldest aunt, face lined like cracked fresco, steps forward with a grin sharp as a razor. Today you will learn the ancient art of greeting, she declares, demonstrating an elaborate cheek kiss sequence that rivals gladiatorial choreography. Left cheek twice, right cheek thrice, forehead once, elbow once, then finish with a bow so low your toga hem nearly drags in the dust. You try it. You end up kissing your cousin's ear, knocking her earring loose and bowing so deeply you nearly faceplant into the fountain. Laughter ricochets off columns. You lift your head, cheeks aflame, and vow silently to master the ceremony before tomorrow's grand greeting marathon. No sooner have you survived the kissing gauntlet than you're herded into the peristyle garden for the feast of familiar spirits. Here, every household ghost from your bride's ancestors is represented by a tiny statue placed on a low table laden with offerings. A skeleton wearing a tiny toga, a stone-faced matron clutching a clay baby, a bust of some long-dead general. All stand sentinel as you carry oil-dipped torches. You must circle the table 3 times clockwise, whispering each ancestor's name correctly. A mistake means forfeiting your place at the table. You stumble over Gaius Postumius. Excuse you. Posthumenius, prompting a chorus of hoots. The bride's grandmother Tuts smacks your hand with a folded fan and demands a do-over. You bow, pull out a notebook, and mumble every name under your breath. By the 3rd lap, torchlight wavers as you choke on incense smoke. At last, you pronounce the final name, Lucilla the Iron-Eyed, and the ancestors are appeased. You may join the feast, which consists of salted porridge and boiled chickpeas. You see why no one bothers to worship these shades. Between mouthfuls of gruel, the bride's cousins challenge you to the game of virtues, a test of Roman manliness. It's 3 contests, carrying a 20-pound amphora across the courtyard without spilling water, reciting a love poem in flawless meter, and wrestling a full-grown boar, well, a piglet in a tiny harness. You heft the amphora. Water sloshes over your toga, drenching your tunic and splashing on marble. You stagger like a drunk, narrowly avoiding the fountain. Next, the poem, "O rose so red your petals unfold." You begin only to forget the next line and improvise about cheese. The cousins snicker, finally pig wrestling. The piglet squeals as you chase it around a column, arms flailing. It nips your calf. You flop onto the ground, gasping. The cousins hoist you upright, pat your back, and crown you most entertaining virtuoso. You stretch sore muscles, grateful it wasn't the most competent. No rest for the newlywed. In the late afternoon, you're summoned before the local magistrate for the public declaration of unity. You mount a short dais in the forum, toga swirling, heart pounding under carved reliefs of Mars. Citizens gather, vendors shouting prices, children chasing goats, philosophers arguing nearby. You must address the crowd in classical Latin. Citizens of Rome, behold our union. You clear your throat, launch into your speech, lose your place halfway through, and substitute mozzarella for matrimony. A merchant in the back spills his, grapes laughing. Embarrassed, you finish with, may our lives be as intertwined as these grapes, which actually works. The crowd applauds half-heartedly. You bow, flee the platform, and nearly collide with a philosopher mumbling, verily, this man invents new metaphors. As dusk settles, the bride's father leads you to the sacred cistern for the blessing of waters. You kneel before the stone basin, water dripping from a marble lion's mouth. Priests chant as they dip laurel branches and flick droplets onto your head. The water's cold sting sends goosebumps across your shoulders. Then the priests intone a prophecy. May your union flow as ceaselessly as the Tiber, but beware the undertow. You blink at each other. Is that a blessing or a warning? The priests vanish into shadow, leaving you shivering. Night brings the final ordeal, the night vigil of vows. You and your bride retire to the cubiculum, where a ring of oil lamps illuminates painted panels of mythic lovers, Apollo and Daphne, Orpheus and Eurydice. You must each vow before these portraits, repeating 12 promises in turn. Your turn comes. I vow to honor you in sickness and health. You begin, voice cracking. By vow 6, exhaustion and the scent of oil lamps merge into a trance. By vow 9, you realize you've mixed up promise 8 and 11, promising to feed you only figs, and to never let bricklayers near our home. Your bride's giggle echoes in the hush. She corrects you with patient amusement. You finish, kneeling, palms pressed together. Then she recites her vows, graceful, measured, solemn. You watch her, heart swelling with relief and pride. At the stroke of midnight, the bride's ladies snuff the lamps. You're plunged into darkness. A single voice intones the final blessing. May Juno watch over you. Then silence, so complete you can hear your own heartbeat. You feel for your bride's hand in the gloom. She clasps it. You squeeze back. In the pitch black, you share a breath, a vow unspoken but understood. You survive 3 days of madness. But the final test, the labyrinth of daily life in Rome, awaits at sunrise. Within seconds, sleep drags you under, dreams filled with toga straps snapping, amphora water sloshing, and piglet squeals. Your first wedding week is almost over, but the true nightmare, navigating household politics, public honors, and endless rituals, looms ahead. Yet in that dark chamber, hand in hand with your bride, you dare to hope. Maybe, just maybe, you'll emerge not as a battered groom, but as a clever Roman husband, if you can survive part 4. The first light of dawn finds you emerging from the cubiculum like a wary gladiator, toga askew, hair plastered with oil lamp soot, and palms still smarting from cutting spelt dough. Your bride greets you in the atrium, where servants whisk away the last oil lamps and fling open shutters to let the golden Roman sun, and the neighborhood's roving goats, pour in. She hands you a steaming cup of mulsum, and you gulp it like a man who's tasted both terror and sleep deprivation in equal measure. Today's trial, managing the household, and by extension, every roomer in the neighborhood. You're summoned to the lararium beside the hearth where the household gods reside. Your task, recite the daily prayer in perfect meter while ladling out yesterday's remains of dormice porridge to the family, an offering so ancient it could petrify the spoons. You clear your throat, lars and penates. You hesitate on penates, suddenly insecure about your Latin declensions. Your mother-in-law raises an eyebrow sharper than a well-thrown pilum. You stumble through the prayer, pour porridge over the gods' miniature busts, and pray that none of them choke. Next, supervising the kitchen, you stride into the kulina, heat steaming off the half-melted garum jars, and find a battalion of slaves already chopping onions. They glance up as you enter, knives flashing. You crack your knuckles, determined to assert authority. Today we prepare the festival feast for Saturnalia, you announce. Silence. Then one slave snorts and returns to slicing. You realize that in Rome, commanding a slave is a bit like ordering the tide to recede. You clear your throat and approach a bubbling cauldron of lentils. You stir and spill half onto the floor. A kitchen hand curses in Greek. You mutter an apology and scoop splatters back in, hoping no magistrate inspects your sanitation. By mid-morning, the courtyard is lined with vendors hawking wreaths, incense, and portable layers statues. You're tasked with purchasing fresh offerings without bankrupting your dowry. You haggle fiercely over a bundle of laurel, only the finest for our gods, but pay triple. The shopkeeper patting your back says, a small price for divine favor, and you wonder if he's ever choked on a dormouse himself. Afternoon brings the council of matrons, where neighborly matrons gather to dispense advice and gossip. You sit on a marble bench, toga clutched at your chest, while they critique your performance. He mumbled the prayer, he scalded the lentils. Did you see him haggle like a fisherman? You nod politely, fire igniting behind your eyes, but bite your tongue, because Roman husbands who argue earn extra chores. When the eldest matron advises you to invigorate your wife's spirits with a stroll by the Tiber, you nod again, wondering if spirits means another dagger-embossed loaf. Evening draws you to the atrium for the first sharing of roles. Here, you and your bride divide tasks. You'll handle external affairs, taxes, grain purchases, arbitration between slaves, while she manages domestic harmony, guest entertainment, and the monthly ritual of checking the wine's clarity. You glance at the ledger, already bursting with columns you can't decipher. She hands you a stylus. "My love," she says sweetly, "we begin tomorrow." Your heart sinks into your sandals. As night falls again, you stumble into the cubiculum, this time deliberately, stumbling over the hem of your purple toga. The pillow smells faintly of rose petals and goat's milk, a comforting reminder of your spa torture bath. You flop onto the mattress, exhausted but oddly exhilarated. In the darkness, your bride slips beside you, wrapping an arm around your chest. "You survived," she whispers. "Tomorrow you'll thrive." You close your eyes, recalling the piglet chase, the amphora spill, the gossiping matrons, and realize that, amidst the absurdity, you've already begun to master the world of a Roman husband. Sleep takes you, dreams filled with toga straps, animal sacrifices, and the triumphant echo of the phrase you finally got right in the lararium. Lares et penats protectores domus nostrae. May your household gods remember it, because in Rome, survival isn't about battles on distant frontiers, but navigating the daily absurdities of home. And you, battered groom turned husband, are well on your way to becoming a legend in your own atrium. Imagine being judged not for the size of your sword arm, but for your prowess in the sack, while your neighbors stand over you with spears to ensure you don't embarrass the entire clan. Welcome to the joy and terror of intimate life in Viking society. Sex in Viking culture was never just about pleasure. It was a public performance, an honor-bound duty, and occasionally a full-blown spectacle that could leave even the bravest jarls blushing. If you thought romance might have survived the age of raiding and raven-feasted battlefields, think again. Here, every tryst carried the weight of family reputation, social standing, and sometimes the very soul of the clan. You awaken before dawn in your longhouse, the wooden walls still vibrating with the final snore of your fellow warriors. There's no snooze button in the Viking world. Instead, you slide out of your fur-lined sleeping pit and steel yourself for the morning ritual. The inspection. Yes, inspection. Your bride, or potential brides, gather in the dim torchlight to ensure you meet their exacting standards of vigor, stamina, and, let's call it, rhythmic competence. This isn't a private act behind closed doors. It's a rite that could determine your bride's loyalty, your family's honor, and whether you'll be allowed another cup of meat at breakfast. First comes the test of the blotar hood. You stand blindfolded beneath the ceremonial canopy while your chosen partner examines you from head to toe, testing reflexes, firmness, and that all-important measure of manliness. Any hesitation, any flinch, any sign that your prowess might be more myth than reality, and you risk being branded a thurs, giant in the worst possible sense, someone so unwieldy you belong only in fairy tales. Fail, and you'll hear the whispers in the longhouse for weeks. Did you see Olaf at the hall feast? Legend says he froze mid-thrust and spent the rest of the night apologizing to his bride's cousins. Pass the hood, and you progress to the Knut's knot ceremony. Your bride presents you with a length of braided cord, her grandmother's finest wool, symbolizing the binding of your bodies. You must tie it around your waist without letting go of her hand. If the knot slips, it's interpreted as a failure of grip, and by extension, of the marital bond. In one legendary case, a groom so nervous he fumbled the braid was forced to publicly repeat the ceremony 3 nights running until his bride's aunt pronounced him steady enough to earn a place beside her niece. Talk about prolonged anxiety. Of course, all these rituals build an audience. Torches blaze in the longhouse corridor. Cousins peer through doorways. The elderly sit on benches carved with runes that mutter ominous advice. Even the jugglers and the harpists can't look away. You feel their eyes boring into you as you stroll or stagger toward the goose feather mattress piled in the corner. Every step is measured, every breath misgivings. You wonder, what if the daisies on her tunic twitch in disapproval? What if the torchlight catches your sweat and makes your skin look, well, less Viking hero, more flailing fish? Then it happens. The grand entrance. You slide the furs back, kneel beside your bride, and, despite the candlelight and the bugle call of anxious spectators, attempt to follow the sacred texts. You chant the words whispered by the skald at your wedding feast, invoking Freya's blessing for fertile union and Odin's favor for courage. But the moment your bride tenses, you realize you've mixed up the order, saying, "Freya, grant me doom," instead of "Freya, grant me vigor." A collective gasp, followed by chuckles stifled behind beards. You flush so hot you'd steam the mead. No worries, Vikings are nothing if not resourceful. The skald, ever the diplomat, leaps in. A blessing for doom can be a blessing for passion, he declares, flashing you a wink. The crowd relaxes, the tension breaks, and the ceremony rolls on. Your bride sighs and you breathe again, but the real test is just beginning. Next, the battle of the blankets. Both of you must wrestle a pair of woolen covers across the mattress for 3 full pulses of the war drum. Think of it like medieval Twister, except failure to flip the blanket properly counts as dishonor, and the losing party must buy the ale for the entire clan the next night. You lunge, the blanket wraps around your leg like a tangled serpent, and you topple into the hay, losing your grip and the match, by a margin so narrow your bride can't help but laugh. Defeated, you hand over a wooden flagon of strong honey mead, your first official debt as husband, which you hope the gods will forgive later. Your bride pats your shoulder, her eyes alight with mischief and a hint of triumph. You grin back, teeth chattering from nerves, and vow to perfect your blanket flip technique before the next feast. Finally, the grand finale, the smoke and scent trial. The longhouse fires are banked low, and trays of burning herbs, juniper, heather, and a particularly pungent moss are placed around the mattress. The skald intones, "May no stench of fear or sweat deter the bond of love." You're to endure the smoky haze for as long as it takes to prove your dedication. 20 minutes in, you're coughing, your eyes streaming, and your helmet of hair is soaked in sweat that smells like a dying walrus. The bride, unflappable, remains calm, her composure a stark contrast to your wheezing efforts. When at last you collapse, lungs empty, pride battered, the longhouse erupts in applause. You've survived, and won, but survival is only half the story. Once the spectators have retreated and the skald has penned the saga, you and your bride must sneak out into the courtyard for the midnight oath. There, beneath the flicker of moonlight on frost, you share your deepest fears and desires, never more public, never more raw. If your words falter, if your vow lacks conviction, the old wives will whisper that your marriage is cursed. So with cold fingers entwined, you swear an old Norse to cherish and protect, to raid side by side, and, most dangerously, to face the horrors of childbirth and old age with equal bravery. As dawn breaks, you stand before the longhouse, hair singed by smoke, eyes bloodshot, body sore from knot tying and blanket battles. You face your bride, draped in a heavy cloak of seal fur, and realize that today, in the agony of ritual honor, you were transformed. No longer a lone warrior, but a man bound by solemn promises and a clan's entire reputation. In the world of Vikings, sex was never a private matter. It was a test of mettle, a public spectacle, and a sacred ceremony that demanded courage, endurance, and the willingness to endure historical absurdity in the relentless pursuit of honor. And if you can survive that, well, maybe you're fit to conquer more than just foreign shores. The morning after your inaugural test of smoke and scent dawns with merciful cool air, your lungs still rattling like loose chainmail, your hair smelling faintly of charred moss. But rest is for the weak, and Viking honor brooks no laziness. Today's gauntlet, the daytime display of fidelity, a public demonstration that you're not some roving horn dog but a one-clan man. You're summoned to the village square at high sun, where every able-bodied soul, thralls, shield maidens, and toddlers armed with wooden swords, gathers beneath the carved totem of Freyr. Suspended from the totem by leather straps are two ceremonial belts, one bearskin, one wolf pelt. To prove your devotion, you must don both and jog a full lap around the clearing without slipping them off, under the watchful eyes of the clan's women and the scornful gaze of the Jarl's wife, Astrid Iron-Tongue Sigurdardottir. You approach, legs wobbling from yesterday's smoky trial. The belts are heavier than they look. The bearskin clings to your midriff like a damp cloak. The wolf pelt straps scratch your sides. You tighten them as best you can, casting a worried glance at your bride, who stands by the totem, arms folded, lips twitching in amusement. The village bard beats his drum, a heartbeat you feel in your gut. With a nod, you step forward. Halfway through the first circuit, your foot catches a stray goat droppings, and you stagger into a thrall carrying a basket of fish. The fish spill. One silver-scaled herring slaps your shin, sending you off balance. The belts shift, the wolf pelt slides down your hip. A chorus of gasps rises. You lunge forward, arms flailing, and manage to catch the pelt just before it reaches your knees. The crowd cheers. Is it relief or mockery? You can't tell. You force a grin, adjust both belts, and sprint on, teeth gritted. By the time you cross the finish line, your legs burn, sweat drips into your eyes, and you resemble a bear that's been wrestled into submission. Astrid narrows her eyes, then claps once. A grudging acknowledgement. You bow, nearly toppling, and present the belts back to the totem, panting. The Jarl's wife steps forward and ties a small silver brooch to your tunic, a symbol of her cautious approval. You tuck it close to your heart. No rest. Next is the afternoon feast of provocation. You're led to a long table groaning under bowls of pickled whale blubber, smoked trout, and honey-glazed boar ribs so sticky they cling to your fingertips no matter how you scrape. Your bride sits across from you, hair still flecked with embers from last night's fires. The custom here is that each spouse must feed the other 3 different dishes, blindfolded. It's designed to test trust, but often devolves into chaos. A linen blindfold is tied snugly around your eyes. You hear your bride's laughter as you're seated. The first spoonful is ladled toward your mouth, something firm and cold. You bite, cow's tongue pressed in aspic. You chew carefully, swallow, and swing the spoon toward her. But your aim is off. You send a blob across her cheek. She closes her eyes. You hiss, "Honey, sorry." She giggles, wipes her face, and guides the spoon to her lips. Next comes a steaming broth, fish head soup, eyes and all. You gag at the fishy stare, but manage to feed her a bowl. The third is a mound of boiled seaweed, tasting of brine and calamity. You slip on the final piece, fling a slimy strand across the table, and it lands in the neighbor's bowl. He shrieks, shears his hair in disgust. The crowd roars. You lift your blindfold. Your bride's tunic is flecked in aspic. Your neighbor glares at you, and a titter runs through the assembly. You bow your head, cheeks burning like firewood, and accept a flagon of ale as penance. You drink, hoping the burn distracts from your shame. Next, the twilight ritual, the oath of word. You and your bride kneel before the Hamingja, a carved wooden statuette representing clan fate. A bowl of runic stones sits between you. Taking turns, you draw 3 stones each. Each stone bears a mark, for strength, for change, for loyalty, for growth, and for conflict. The clan seer interprets, if you draw conflicting symbols, say loyalty and conflict, you must perform an additional trial to harmonize fated contradictions. Your first draw, loyalty, good. Her first, growth, noble. Second draw, you get conflict. The seer raises an eyebrow. Bride second, you got conflict too. The seer intones, your bond is forged in storm. Third, you draw change. Bride draws strength. The seer nods solemnly. The storm is inevitable. To unify loyalty with conflict, You must demonstrate solidarity under hardship. Tonight's final ordeal is the midnight fire leap. As the moon rises, the clan reconvenes at the edge of a great bonfire, lit in the central clearing. The fire towers, sparks spiraling skyward. A narrow ember-guard path leads to a stacked pile of logs at the far end. The rule: hand in hand, you and your bride must sprint along the glowing path and leap onto the logs, extinguishing the embers underfoot with sand pails at the finish. A misstep means burning feet or worse, shame in the afterlife. Your bride's hand finds yours. Her grip is steady and warm. Together you step onto the smoldering stones. The heat is intense. Your boots hiss as ash seeps in. You lunge forward, adrenaline poleaxing your nerves. Sparks fly as you run, your bride tugging you onward. Halfway, your foot slips. Pain flares as you land awkwardly on a hot patch. You grit your teeth, press on, stinging souls screaming. You see the logs ahead. A pail of cool sand waits. With one final bound, you clear the glowing path, landing on skidding embers. She lands beside you. You both flail for the sand, but spill half onto each other. Coughing, you bury your feet, cool grains soaking into your boots. You exhale in relief. The clan cheers. The storm of conflict and loyalty mastered. You and your bride stand together, silhouettes flickering in the bonfire's glow, feet burning but hearts roaring with triumph. Back in the longhouse, elders clap as you walk in, soot-streaked and triumphant. The clan chieftain raises a horn of mead. You have proven your bond, he proclaims. The hall resounds with cheers. You lift your own horn, meet your bride's gaze, and drink deep. The mead burns, but you taste victory and the iron tang of honor well earned. Before dawn claims the skies, your final duty, the lullaby of the longship. You and your bride stand on the deck of the clan's vessel moored by the shore, the fjord's black water rippling beneath lantern light. Together, you sing an ancient chant to calm restless spirits and bless future voyages. Waves may crash and sails may tear, but our hearts are bound in prayer. Storm or calm, our fates entwine, blood and bone, this bond divine. Your voices echo across the water. Behind you, the oarsmen nod solemnly. The sailors grip their shields. The ritual done, you step ashore, the chill air kissing your skin. The crowd disperses, leaving you alone with your bride by the torchlit dock. You turn to her, bruised, battered, and enlivened by the day's trials. She smiles, brushing ash from your cheek. "Honor demands sacrifice," she says softly. You nod, pressing a kiss to her brow. "And we've sacrificed much," you reply. "But we've earned our place, not just as lovers, but as equals in strength and spirit." As you walk back to the longhouse, arm in arm, you can almost hear the skald's quill scratching new verses, of belts and bonfires, of blindfolded feasts, uts and fiery leaps. Today, Viking sex proved to be more than desire. It was a crucible of honor, a spectacle of devotion, and the forging ground of legends. And you, once the trembling groom, have emerged ready to face every absurd, brutal trial the sagas can throw at you. Tomorrow, part 3 awaits, where the saga deepens with the Midnight Council of Spirits and the notorious Feast of the Valkyries. Stay tuned, if you dare. By the third dawn, you've come to see sleep as a betrayal, but there's no rest for those pledged to Viking love's peculiar rites. Today's conquests begin before the roosters crow, the dawn council of wise women. You're led, still half asleep, to the edge of the longhouse yard where a semicircle of the clan's matriarchs awaits, their faces mapped with rune paint and iron-cold eyes. At their feet lies the Heartstone, a smooth boulder carved with interlacing serpents and wolves. Your task: peer into the pool of water atop the stone and confess, aloud, your deepest fear about your union. If your words sound hollow, the matriarchs will pass judgment and send you to the trial of the midnight whip at dusk. You shuffle forward, mind foggy with last night's bonfire smoke. The clan's harpist plucks a single mournful note as you gaze into the still water. Your heart hammers, dew drips from your beard. The matriarchs lean in, waiting. You clear your throat. "I fear." Your voice cracks. Your bride, standing just behind you, places a firm hand on your shoulder. Steeling yourself, you continue. "I fear that I will never satisfy you, that my vigor will fade and leave you bound to regrets I cannot undo." Silence. The matriarchs exchange glances. One whispers in Old Norse, "Truth, at last." They murmur blessings. You exhale, shoulders sagging with relief. You've proven your honesty, at least for now. Next, the ritual hunt of the heart. From the longhouse doorway, you watch as the clan's hunters release a great stag into a makeshift enclosure. The creature leaps with antlers like crashing branches. You and your bride each receive the hunting spear, yew shaft, iron tip, and must together track and spear the stag, symbolizing the collaborative pursuit of desire. If either of you fails, the bond is considered lopsided, a dishonor that demands penance at the next full moon. You slip into furs, nerves sharpened by the stag's bellows. Torches flicker as the herd thunders past, hooves churning earth into mud. Your bride's eyes glitter. She points to a gap in the barricade. You nod, advance. The stag pivots, nostrils flaring. You raise your spear, only to find the shaft bending alarmingly. You grit your teeth, thrust, and the iron grazes the stag's flank. It snorts in pain and charges. Your bride lunges, spear flashing. It embeds in the beast's shoulder, dropping it to its knees. Together you approach. Solemnly, you deliver the final blow. The crowd cheers as you gut the stag, heart pounding with triumph and a strange primal satisfaction. Your bride brushes blood from your chin with a trembling hand. You share a look that needs no words. Today, you hunted and conquered together. Blood still on your palms, you proceed to the Feast of the Five Flames. Long torches flare along a raised dais where a massive fire pit gapes like a hungry maw. 5 clusters of delicacies, smoked boar ribs, pickled shark meat, barley cakes, spice mead jelly, and sweet cloudberries surround the flames. You and your bride must each retrieve one morsel from the center, snatch it from the blistering inferno without protection, and deliver it to your spouse's lips. Failure to retrieve of a morsel unburned means forfeiting the right to lead the clan's next raid. You step forward, chest tight. The flames roar, licking the sky. You plunge a bare hand into the heat, sear your fingers on blackened metal, and yank free a charred bone of boar. Your skin blistered but prize in hand, you turn to her, only to see her recoil at the sight. You grimace, then press the bone to her lips. She bites gently, gazes at your burnt hand, and smiles, a gesture of acceptance and fierce solidarity. She then steps into the flames herself, retrieves a ruby-red mead jelly, and offers it to you. You taste its sweetness and fire, feeling the raw essence of your bond. Midday brings a brief respite, the blessing of the sacred springs. You follow a torchlit path through the forest to a hidden spring said to be Freya's secret haven. You kneel, dip your hair and beard into the icy water, then scoop a handful to sprinkle over your bride's shoulders. The shock of cold makes you gasp, her lips pressed to your cheek in a tender, wordless blessing. You stand, clasping each other's hands, feeling the equilibrium restored. Cold water washing away the sting of burns and blood. The afternoon's climax, the ceremony of shared dreams. In the longhouse's central hall, the clan skald sets a circle of wooden stools around a steaming cauldron of hallucinogenic honey wine brewed with wild mushrooms. You and your bride take seats opposite each other. Each sip is met with a cautious nod. Soon, you both feel the world warp. Shadows lengthen, torchlight dances like living serpents, and the skald's voice echoes in distant caverns. Your bride's eyes glaze. She rises and begins to recite a poem you wrote in secret weeks before. Lines you thought lost to time. Every word lands with surreal clarity. Tears spring in her eyes. You stand, voice trembling, and speak your own verse back to her. Promises of shared dawns, of forging legends, of facing horrors side by side. The clan listens in awed silence as you weave metaphors of iron and snow, of blood and hearth, binding your souls amid the haze of enchanted wine. When at last the visions ebb and the firelight steadies, you collapse into each other's arms, minds, and hearts entwined in a communion that transcends ritual. Dusk falls into night, but the true final ordeal awaits, the trial of the eternal watch. You and your bride are led to the roof of the longhouse, where the winter sky sprawls, glittering with stars. Around you, torches form a circle. The clan assembles below, their voices hushed. In each of your hands rests a small, flickering candle. The rule is simple yet brutal. Hold the candle aloft until it burns out completely. Should either of you drop your light or extinguish it prematurely, the gods will mark your bond as fleeting and unworthy. No speaking, no shifting. It's a test of endurance, of will, of unwavering devotion. You light your candle. The flame wavers in the cold wind. Your bride's candle flickers beside yours. Minutes stretch. The stars wheel overhead. The wind bites at your faces. Fingers numb, arms ache, but you refuse to let your candle die. Each breath feels like inhaling shards of ice. Your bride's candle sputters. Your heart thunders as you instinctively lean toward her, but a stern scald silhouette looms. No aid shall be given, you whisper, heart-wrenching. You push back, focusing on your own flame. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, your candle guttering, you pinch it out deliberately, right at the last moment. The crowd erupts in triumphant cries as your bride follows suit, extinguishing hers in perfect unison. You both bow, breath ragged, hearts soaring. You survived the eternal vigil and proved your bond could withstand the chill of the cosmos itself. Descending from the roof, you re-enter the longhouse to a feast prepared by the clan's cooks. Platters of roasted venison, fresh rye bread, wild berry preserves. No ritual burns here, just the warmth of shared triumph. Your bride stands before you, arms open. You embrace, sweat-soaked and smudged with ash, and share a long, fierce kiss that tastes of honey wine and smoke. Around you, the clan's cheers rise in a tide of approval. As the night wanes, you slip away with your bride to the hidden loft above the cattle stalls, a private sanctuary lined with sheepskins and wildflower bundles. Here, no matriarchs, no scalds, no torches, just you, her, and the hush of the longhouse breathing around you. You speak softly of dreams yet unfulfilled, of children strong as wolves, of voyages across stormy seas, of tales waiting to be sung. She traces runes in the dust at your feet, spells of protection and love. You clasp her hand and vow to guard those runes with your life. When you at last lie down together, exhaustion claims you instantly. In sleep, your dreams are a tapestry of rituals past and those yet to come. The fourth and final part beckons with curses of childbirth, with jokes at your expense, with the cold steel of history's absurd challenges. But tonight, wrapped in each other's arms, you rest knowing you faced the fires, the hunts, the vigils, and emerged as true partners, not just in sex or honor, but in the grand saga of Viking life. Part 3 ends here, but the story and the trials will ride on until you stand unbreakable before the gods and men alike. The fourth dawn breaks with a hush over the longhouse. Tonight's final trials weigh heavier than any sword swing or fire leap. You awaken to the low murmur of your bride's voice as she gathers herbs by the hearth, her silhouette rimmed in golden dawn light. Today's trials aren't public spectacles but private crucibles of endurance, trust, and raw humanity, the curse of childbirth, the trial of the sundered hearth, and the rite of the unbroken knot. Succeed, and your bond is sealed by the gods. Fail, and the shadows of doubt will stalk your union for years to come. First comes the curse of childbirth. No, you will not be giving birth, but you must honor the sacred agony your bride may one day face. The matriarchs lead you to the birthing chamber, a narrow room scented with juniper smoke and lined with heavy furs. There, a carved birch cradle sits empty, its wood cold as death. Your task: for each breath she takes, you must mimic her pain, leaning against a pillar, drawing a deep "oogh," curling your fingers against raw sinew. A midwife, her arms thick with old scars, times your groans with the bride's measured breathing. At first, your imitations are theatrical, an oof here, a ha there, drawing curt nods. But as the ritual progresses, your groans deepen, echoing off the plank walls in hollow solidarity. Each rise and fall of the bride's chest becomes your own, every tremor mirrored in your knees. Sweat beads on your brow, your voice cracks like splintering wood. When the midwife finally pronounces the trial complete, you collapse into the cradle, limbs trembling, heart pounding. The bride kneels beside you, pressing cool water to your forehead, as she did for the stag's blood. In her eyes, gratitude glows brighter than any hearth fire. You have shared in her future miseries, binding your fates more tightly than any blood oath. Without pause, you rise to face the trial of the sundered hearth. The longhouse hearth, heart of the clan's life, has been dismantled at dusk, stones stacked in a circle across the yard, the fire gone cold. Your task, with bare hands and tools carved from elderwood, you and your bride must relight the hearth together, using only the friction of wood and the sparks from flint. No tinder, no kindling, just sweat and grit. You kneel opposite each other, backs to the wind, rubbing two sticks together with desperate speed. Your hands blister, your breath billows in white clouds. The bride's brow glistens, her fingers slip. You lean forward, clasp her forearm, and press their mad rhythm into hers, two souls grinding sparks from the same grindstone. A scatter of sparks, a puff of smoke, then red embers glow between the sticks. You shield her hands, she draws in a roaring breath, and the embers catch. Firs laid atop crackle, twigs ignite, the hearth blazes anew. Flames leap, licking the morning air. Together, you set a fresh pot of stewing meat upon the flames, and the scent of warming broth weaves through the longhouse rafters like a promise that even sundered trials can be reforged by unity. Now, the final and most secretive rite of the unbroken knot. The longhouse's woven tapestry, an immense panel depicting the world tree, hangs before you both. Its threads have frayed, the celestial knot at its center lies loose. You must enter with shears, needle, and heavy thread dyed crimson from mountain berries, and repair the knot in solitude, without speech and without allowing the tapestry to touch the ground. It's a test of silent cooperation. Your movements must mirror hers, your breaths align, your will converge. In the low light, you push aside furs and sit cross-legged before the tapestry. She sits opposite you, eyes steady. You cut a length of thread, she threads the needle. You pass the thread between your lips as old custom demands, two halves of one vow. Your fingers tremble as you begin weaving, her hands guiding your own. A slip, a snag, and the tapestry flickers in the torchlight like a wounded beast. You freeze. She lays a steady hand on your wrist. You nod. Together, you unknot the snarled section, then reweave each loop, one by her, one by you. Minute by minute, breath by silent breath, you reconstruct the celestial knot. Hours pass. The hearth's glow dims and brightens as torches churn. At last, the final loop falls into place. The tapestry hangs whole again, a symbol of fates entwined. You remove the shears, lean your foreheads together, and exhale as one. The longhouse door groans open, and the clan steps inside, silently witnessing your success. But the story does not end with ritual triumph. As evening gathers, the longhouse's doors open wide for the clan's feast of new beginnings. Tables groan under bowls of roasted leg of mutton, honey-glazed carrots, fresh cheese wheel, and mead so potent that even the chieftain's ale mug trembles in salute. The clan circles you and your bride, raising horns in a toast that reverberates through timber and bone. To the couple who brave all trials, drums roll, flutes trill, and the skald begins a new saga, your saga, singing of groans in the birthing. Chamber of sparks struck between united hands and of silent stitches in tapestry darkness. Each verse falls like hammer on anvil, forging your legend in the steel of song. As night deepens, you stand on the threshold of the longhouse, warm from triumph and ale. Your bride slips her arm through yours, fingers brushing the scar on your palm from the smoke trial. She leans close, voice soft with laughter and awe. "You endured more than any man I know," she whispers. You turn her to face you, torchlight dancing on her cheekbones. "I endured because I did not want to stand alone," you reply. Outside, the clan's revelry swells, a living testament that love in Viking culture was never merely private, but a crucible of honor, pain, endurance, and communal witness. Finally, you retire to your private loft, an enclave of soft skins, wildflowers dried in bundles, and a single silver spear tip mounted above the doorway, a gift from your bride's father. There, as dawn's first light creeps through the smoke hole, you slip beside your bride, limbs entwined like roots of the world tree. You speak not of endurance or trials, but of tomorrow's quiet dawn, of fetching fresh water, of mending nets, of teaching your future children the sagas you have lived. Your bride smiles, tracing runes of protection on your shoulder, and you close your eyes, exhausted, triumphant, bound by trials no outsider could fathom. In the darkness before sleep claims you, you recall each absurd ritual, each ironic test, each sharpened edge of survival's pain. and realized they were not mere customs, but rites that chiseled your bond into something unbreakable. In Viking culture, sex was a matter of honor, because every act of union transformed two individuals into one force, witnessed by gods and clan alike, forged in sweat, blood, smoke, and silence. Tomorrow, the long aisles of history will remember you not just as a brave groom, but as a man who faced the raw crucible of intimacy under the unblinking gaze of his people, and emerged unbroken. And that, above all, is the true saga of sex in the Viking world. Imagine standing before your father's hall, clutching a wooden chest of dowry gifts while your bride's brothers circle you with axes, because in Viking society, taking a wife was as much about property transfer, alliances, and proving your mettle as it was about romance. What it meant to take a wife in Viking society began long before any bridal feast or woolen cloak exchange. A potential groom first entered the fray by negotiating a bride price with his future in-laws, an event as ruthless as bartering fine fur and silver arm rings in the market squares of Hedeby or Birka. The bride price might include cattle, weapons, amber beads, and the dubious promise that you'd survive the wedding rituals intact. Refuse to pay and risk a Holmgang challenge from the bride's kin, a duel to the death or until first blood, because insulted families viewed unpaid dowries as immediate grounds for violent recompense. Even if you survived the duel, your reputation would be shattered, and no other clan would willingly accept you as kin. Once the bride price was settled, the groom faced the infamous bridal kidnapping ritual, though not all kidnappings were entirely consensual. Under the cover of night, in some clans, a band of young men representing the groom's side abducted the bride from her family's longhouse. The bride's kin might resist, hurling torches and brandishing spears, turning the kidnapping into a full-blown skirmish. If the bride laughed at her abduction, an ancient sign of consent, for laughter proved she had not feared dishonor, the ritual succeeded. Any tears would seal a bride's reluctance, triggering a restitution protocol that could include additional gifts or, even worse, a second kidnapping attempt under different auspices. Accepting a bride without her laughter meant a curse on the union, whispered among seers as Frank Nuder, a perilous sign foretold to bring barrenness and misfortune. Surviving the abduction was only the beginning. The groom then presented the bride at the thing, the local assembly, where his new status as husband was publicly registered. Here, he had to swear oaths before the clan's jarls and landowners, promising to protect his wife's honor, maintain her household, and share in communal obligations. Any slip of the tongue or mispronounced name in the solemn oath could void the marriage, forcing the pair back to renegotiation, or in extreme cases, an annulment by spear point. Witnesses at the thing carefully recorded these vows on rune-carved wood or bone slips, ensuring that a husband's word remained binding even if he later sought to cast off his wife. Next, the groom endured the nuptial feast, a brutal test disguised as celebration. A table groaning with roast boar, pickled salmon, smoked sheep's head, and fermented honey ale awaited the couple. But for the groom, each course was a gauntlet. He had to offer his bride a portion first, signifying her new primacy in his household. If he sloppily missed her hand with the spoon or dropped a hunk of meat on her lap, onlookers would mock his incompetence. Worse still, the meat might be laced with hallucinogenic herbs reserved for fertility rituals, such as mugwort and henbane, causing the groom to stagger into fits of delirium, his sensibilities unraveling before the clan's scornful laughter. Amidst the ale and jest came the customary gifting. The bride bestowed upon her new husband a heavy woolen cloak, symbolizing her acceptance of his protection, while he gave her a set of brooches and a spindle, an emblem not only of domestic duties, but also of her essential role in the clan's economic stability through textile production. Misplace or lose these gifts before the year's end, and your marriage was considered impermanent, like a shield leaky in battle, unfit for service. Rumor held that a woman who displayed her bride price gifts in the hall throughout the year ensured her husband remained loyal, reminding him daily of the wealth he'd invested. But the most absurd trial awaited in the bridal chamber. As torches dimmed and the longhouse grew silent, the groom was led to a raised platform where his bride waited on a bed covered in goose down and woven furs. He had to present her with a ceremonial knife, a razor worn at the waist next to his spear. This knife symbolized his duty to protect her and their offspring, yet presenting the knife involved a precarious dance. He knelt, bowed low and slipped the knife's tang between folds of her dress. One misstep, one nudge of the blade, and he might cut her gown, or worse, nick her skin. A bride's blood during this ritual was considered a bad omen, predicting a marriage fraught with strife and possible exile. Should that happen, the groom faced an ordeal by fire, walk between blazing logs to prove his innocence and courage, or be cast out from the clan with only the clothes on his back. Following this perilous rite, the couple signed a marriage pact, sealed on a piece of oiled parchment made from young calf skin. This pact detailed their mutual obligations: the husband's responsibility to defend the wife's clan, her duty to bear and rear children who would one day fill the clan's mead halls, and their shared duty to attend everything in naval raid. If a husband failed to fulfill these duties, the wife could petition the assembly for divorce, reclaiming her dowry and the right to remarry. But divorce for a woman was fraught with social peril, as many clans banned divorced women from certain rites, considering them akin to Valkyries banished from Odin's favor. Even after the formalities, the realities of daily survival bound the couple more tightly than any ritual. In Viking society, a wife was not a demure companion, but a co-ruler of home and holdings. She managed the spinning, weaving, and brewing that sustained the clan through harsh winters. The husband's status rose or fell based on her success in producing textiles and preserving food. Any failure on her part, spoiled mead, moth-eaten wool, or underfed thralls, fell as a direct stain on the groom's honor. He would be ridiculed for marrying a weak hand, and his warrior reputation could suffer, drawing jeers at feasts and challenging his claim to any future raids. Thus, to take a wife in Viking society was not an act of personal affection alone, but a strategic alliance, a test of courage, negotiation mastery, ritual endurance, and daily cooperation in a world governed by harsh landscapes and equally harsh codes of honor. Every sliver of a dagger presented, every rune-inscribed vow sworn, every grain of mead spilled in celebration or derision, wove into the tapestry of a marriage that could elevate a man to legend, or bury him in shame beneath the frozen earth. Your saga as a Viking groom began long before your first dawn together, and extended far beyond your final duel, shaping both your destiny and the fate of your new family. As dawn breaks on your second season as a married man, you awaken to the clamoring of children's laughter and the rhythmic clatter of spinning wheels echoing through the courtyard. No more private moments in your longhouse pit. Your new life as husband means full immersion in your wife's world of warp and weft, hearth and hall. Today's lesson: what it truly means to share labor, honor, and clan standing with the woman you took last winter. Your first task of the day is the ritual of the dairy kettle. Before you can taste your morning skyr, thick, tangy yogurt steeped with wild berries, you must prove your worth by churning butter alongside your wife, who wields the churn staff like a seasoned warrior. She stands waist deep in a wooden vat, the sour cream swirling at her feet. You step forward, grip the staff, and plunge in. The cream resists, cool and unforgiving. Your arms tremble after a dozen strokes as the fat begins to coalesce. A low whistle from the idle thrall gathering eggs signals your slow progress. You smile and shake out your arms, only to lose your grip and watch half the cream splash onto your tunic. "Not bad," your wife says without looking up, "but let's hope you fare better at lunch." You grin sheepishly and refocus. This is not the place for embarrassment. Here, your reputation hinges on productive toil. By midday, you've earned your bowl of skyr, sweetened with honey scraped from clay combs. But there's no rest. The thing approaches, and as a married man you must attend. Dressed in your wolfskin cloak and best armoring, you join your bride on the bench reserved for household heads. The thing's long table groans with scrolls, rune-inscribed wood boards, and clay tablets recording every land claim, feud, and fine ode. Today's agenda: a boundary dispute between your wife's cousin and a neighboring clan. You listen as both parties present evidence, a livestock tally here, a sworn oath there. When it's your turn to speak, you stand and recite the clan's charter. My voice echoes our household's vow. We honor peace and compensate justly. May our boundaries be marked by shared respect, not sharpened steel. A murmur ripples through the assembly. Some jostle their spears, others nod. The chieftain bangs his hammer. Boundary set. So it stands. You sit, heart pounding. This is no mere debate club. Your words have upheld your wife's family land, and in Viking society, that act cements your value more than any raid spoils. With the thing concluded, you return to the longhouse for the Feast of the Spindle. It's an annual celebration of the household's weaving output, the fine linen and woolen cloaks that keep your clan alive through polar nights. A low bench displays bolts of fabric, deep greens of forest moss, charcoal grays of storm clouds, and the rare golden yellow drawn from welled flowers. The weave patterns are ciphered stories, victory at sea, ancestors' sagas, the binding of oath-sworn brothers. Your wife gestures at a bolt embroidered with the wolf's progress, a motif commemorating her father's legendary winter raid. That must hang in our hall, she says. You agree, slicing a length and weighing the price in silver beads and cuckoo spit dye. A grin flickers. This tapestry will speak in hushed tones of your household's prosperity long after you're gone. Afternoon shadows lengthen as you prepare for the blessing of the brood gables. You and your wife kneel before the lararium, a small shrine in the courtyard, where ancestors' effigies stand in silent watch. The clan's matriarch brings a nest of goose eggs wrapped in furs. You each cradle an egg, whisper a vow for fertile lineage, healthy children, strong as oak, clever as fox. Then comes the absurd twist. You must each carry the egg, cupped in your palms, along a narrow bench to the hearth without letting it crack, symbolizing your joint guardianship of the family line. You step forward first, elbows tight, gaze fixed. Midway, the bench tilts as a thrall stumbles past. You catch the egg with one hand, heart in your throat. Your wife applauds, then takes her turn, her feet sure as a fox stalking prey. When both eggs sit unbroken in the hearth's embers, the matriarch pronounces the blessing. May your brood be as unyielding as these shells. You exhale, relieved, already imagining the fierce bragging rights among fathers-to-be. As twilight beckons, the household shifts into the rite of shared shelter. A sudden gale rattles the longhouse roof, scattering straw and sending thralls scrambling. You and your wife step onto the gallery roof to secure the thatch. There, under wind-whipped skies, you learn the art of binding reeds with rush cord, each lash a knot of trust. Your wife demonstrates, fingers nimble despite the gale. You struggle, cords tangling like sea kelp. A slip sends a handful of thatch tumbling. You catch a drifting bundle just before it sails off the eaves. Your wife calls, "Well caught," and you feel that rare surge, fear met with her steady hand and shared responsibility. Back inside, the hearth's fire crackles as the clan gathers for the evening ale. You pour horns of rustic brew, cloudy with yeast and tang of juniper, handing one to your wife before taking yours. This simple courtesy, long practiced, reminds every onlooker that the groom's first duty is to honor his wife. You sip and savor the bitter brew. She raises an eyebrow and you grin, savoring the private joke. Nothing tastes sweeter than duty fulfilled. Before retiring, there's one last custom, the night watch banter. Your wife slips on a hooded cloak and leads you to the cattle stalls behind the longhouse. There, amidst the lowing beasts, you engage in the ritual jest-off, improvised taunts and boasts meant to test your wit, courage, and gentle mockery of each other. "Your butter's so sour," she jests. "Even the thralls barter for my churn." You fire back. "You're weaving so fine, even the Norns would envy your stitches." Laughter echoes off wooden beams. The other married couples join in, trading playful insults that end in good-natured cups of ale. Here, in the warm glow of flickering lanterns, you see that marriage in Viking society was as much about humor and partnership as it was about oaths and rituals. When you finally slip into your shared bed, a mound of goose down beneath heavy skins, you feel the day's labor settle in your bones. Yet a quiet joy warms you. You've churned butter side by side, defended property before the thing, bound roofs in wind, and upheld ancestral rights. You've learned that taking a wife meant stepping into a world where every act, mundane or marvelous, was woven into the clan's saga. Tomorrow brings new duties, the half-year harvest offerings, the winter wool drives, more thing sessions, and the ever-watchful eyes of ancestors and neighbors alike. But tonight, lying beside your partner in knotted furs, you drift toward the sleep with a single clear thought. Together, you are the beating heart of your household, and that, more than any sword or shield, is your true honor. You wake to the clang of your wife's loom, each shuttle snap more urgent than a war horn, and realize it's time for the weaving festival, the mid-season rite where every household displays its cloth before visiting jarls and scalds. You stumble out of your furs, hair tangled like a storm-tossed net, and find your wife already directing thralls to hang the newest tapestries. Scenes of coastal raids, monstrous sea serpents, and your one glorious, if somewhat exaggerated, victory over a drunken neighbor. She hands you a length of her finest wool, dyed with alder bark. "Hold this taut," she orders. You grip the edges, arms trembling as she stitches mythic runes along the border. A spectator, your brother-in-law, raises an eyebrow. Careful not to snap the thread, mighty warrior. You force a grin and keep your grip, acutely aware that one broken fiber could become tomorrow's hall feast mockery. By midday, the longhouse courtyard is a riot of color and song. Visiting skalds recite epic sagas, their verses punctuated by the hiss of roasting boar. You're tasked with the hymn of hearth, standing before the assembled jarls to praise your wife's handiwork. You clear your throat and launch into a measured recitation. Behold the threads of sea and storm, woven by hands both fierce and warm. Halfway through, your voice cracks on fierce, sounding more like fears, and the assembled jarls murmur. Your wife, perched beside the tapestries, suppresses a laugh behind her hand. You soldier on, eyes blazing, determined to finish your ode without another hiccup. When you bow, a handful of thralls toss petals at your feet. Tribute or pity, you can't be sure. No sooner do you return than you're dragged to the Mead Council, a rather misleading name for what is really a dispute-settling session fueled by spiced ale. A traveling trader accuses your household of undermeasuring barley in a recent flour deal, and the trader's demands sound suspiciously like they want more than just a fair measure. They want a chunk of your wife's prized honey reserves. You rise, all sloshing in your horn, and reply with solemn gravity, "Our barley is weighed beneath the eye of Freyr. If more is owed, let him strike my horn if I speak falsely." You slam the horn on the bench. Foam flies like battlefield spray. The trader sputters, the jarls nod, and the dispute dissolves, though not before a jarlsman quips, "Beware the next clan's ale, for we know your wife's honey is sweeter than your words are stout." That evening brings the preparation for winter's raid. In Viking life, a husband honors his bride by proving he can bring home spoils to fill the mead hall when frost bites. You and your wife spread maps on a low table, leather parchments marked with coastal settlements ripe for plunder. She traces a finger over a distant isle rumored to hold amber and silver. "You aim too far," she warns. "The tides run fierce there." You roll up the map with a grin. "And so do I." She smirks, then hands you a set of iron-tipped oars. "Get your men ready, the tide won't wait." You nod, heart thrumming with anticipation and terror at the thought of leading inexperienced thralls into storm-tossed seas. Night falls, and the household shifts into the ritual of shared tales. By the hearth, your family's saga ring forms. Skalds, elders, and mischievous youth circle, each ready to add a verse to your ongoing legend. Your wife kicks things off with a bawdy recounting of your first attempt at wielding her spindle, portraying you as a wool-clad bear who tangled yourself in yarn. The crowd roars. It's your turn. You must recall the tale of your greatest raid. You stand, cloak billowing, and declare in booming tone how you single-handedly captured a merchant's chest of silver. At that moment, your wife's half-smile flickers into a grin as she produces the actual chest, your spoils now repurposed as her jewelry box. You bow sheepishly, quip, "I fought 6 men for it," and the crowd erupts in laughter and applause. This ritual reminds you that every boast must be balanced by your wife's sharp wit, and that's what keeps your legend honest. Before bed, there's the midnight oath renewal. In the courtyard under starlight, you and your wife stand before the carved stave of your forebears. Each grips a flint torch as the matriarchs chant blessings in Old Norse. You step forward and repeat the vow you first spoke when you took a wife. To protect her, honor her craft, and fill your hall with laughter, not sorrow. Your wife follows, her vow weaving strength and humor into your bond, to trust you in battle and tease you at feast, to guide you in counsel and crown you in mock glory. When you clutch hands and the torches flare, the clan voices a unified cheer, a firestorm of approval that warms the cold night. Climbing into your shared sleeping pit, you feel the weight of the day's labors, the pride in your wife's loom, the triumph over barley disputes, the thrill of plotting raids, and the laughter of communal tales. Your wife nestles beside you, running fingers through your hair. Tomorrow, she whispers, we'll face the winter storm together and see if your oarsman's arm is as strong as your tongue. You squeeze her hand, muscles aching but spirit alight. In Viking society, taking a wife meant joining forces in every absurd, brutal, and absurdly brutal ritual life could throw at you, and knowing that together, survival was more than bare endurance. It was the forging of an unbreakable saga. As winter's grip tightens, the true measure of a Viking husband proves itself not in rituals, but in the daily grind of survival, and the quiet forging of legacy. Today's final gauntlet is less spectacle and more endurance. The trial of endless nights, the covenant of kin and kindred, and the farewell to youth. Before dawn, you and your wife step onto the high gallery overlooking the fjord, where winter winds scream like starving wolves. Each year, married couples reenact the trial of endless nights. For 3 frigid watches, you must patrol the roofline of the longhouse together, stoking the fires below and ensuring no thatch drifts away. Torch in hand, you shoulder the first watch as your wife huddles against the stone parapet, needle and wool to reset any frost-cracked tiles. Your lungs sting in the icy air, your torch sputters. You cough, steady the flame, and hear her soft encouragement. Hold the wind, love. Hours stretch as the stars wheel. You pass the torch, collapse, and she takes the next watch without complaint. When the 3rd watch ends at sunrise, you meet in the courtyard, bodies numb but spirits blazing. In that silent communion, you feel the depth of partnership more than any feast could offer. Later, the covenant of kin and kindred unfolds by the Willorarium. Here, you formalize ties with not only your bride's immediate family, but also with thralls once bound to her father's hall, and neighboring clans you've come to know through thing debates and shared raids. Each household brings a gift, cured meats, furs, carved drinking horns. You and your wife receive them and reciprocate with bolts of woven wool and a set of silver brooches stamped with your joint sigil. A wolf and a bear entwined. Every gift exchange cements alliances, ensuring that your home stands strong against famine, foreign raiders, or the unpredictable wrath of the gods. You clasp hands with the neighboring jarl, eyes meeting in sober acknowledgement. Today's handshake could mean tomorrow's shield wall. By midday, the longhouse echoes with the feast of remembrance. Elders recount your year's deeds, how you defended the western boundary, how your wife's dying kept the clan's banners bright, how you both quelled a feud over stolen sheep with words sharper than any sword. Meats roast, ale flows. You stand beside your wife, each toast a pebble in your shared tombstone of memory. When the skald raises a final horn, to the couple who turned seasons into saga, you lift your drink and catch your wife's eye. Her smile straightens your shoulders. As twilight falls, you face the farewell to youth. A bittersweet rite as you pass from impetuous groom to seasoned husband. A single horn sounds, and from the rafters descend talismanic pendants carved from bone. A young warrior's sword, a maiden's shield, a sparrow in flight. Couples don these honors as a sign they've graduated from reckless passion to enduring guardianship. You hang the sword at your belt, sharp, tempered, while your wife clasps the shield at her throat, its center embossed with your household's mark. Beneath the torchlight, you both bow to the clan, acknowledging that carefree days of feasting and folly have given way to the weighty responsibilities of hearth and kin. Finally, the night closes with the silent vigil. The longhouse doors remain open, and every married couple stands in the crawl space between hall and sky, hands clasped in complete stillness, no sound but the wind in the rafters and the low breath of the fjord. For an hour, you and your wife share the hush. No laughter, no ritual words, only the pulsing life of your joined hearts. It is in this void that marriage's deepest truth reveals itself, that beyond ceremonies and alliances, what it means to take a wife in Viking society is to forge an unspoken, unbreakable bond. When the first morning light filters through the smoke hole, you exchange a quiet nod. The saga continues, not in grand events, but in every breath you draw together against the endless night.